Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augment Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously welcome back to the show. Today's episode 241 of the show, and before we get started, we're just going to do a little bit of house cleaning because, well, it only makes sense that we do it around here, so let's just get on with the house cleaning. I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening to today's episode. It does mean a lot to me. You guys constantly take time in your days to download these episodes, to share these episodes, to constantly keep letting me know how you feel, whether you like my stupid face or not, or my opinions or not, because at the end of the day, it's greatly appreciated, and I greatly appreciate you. And also, thank you to the Patreon backers as well for supporting the show. You guys are also greatly appreciated as well. And in many ways, it's interesting because this episode is obviously coming out, on a Friday. It's also December the 2nd, so we're almost near the end of the year. And it's interesting because we're talking about, well, let me preference this first. This week's poll was very close. We had topics of talking about whether it be the 4080 not selling as well, or talking about the state of the Nintendo Switch. And overall, in the end, the Nintendo Switch topic won, which is why we're talking about the state of the Nintendo Switch right now. And in many ways, we're in a very interesting spot because here's where I say it gets funny, because people say, yes, the Nintendo Switch is going to be hitting 7 years, even though realistically it's only going to hit year 6, because it came out in March 3rd. And even though it was officially unveiled in October of 2016, but released in March of 2017. So it's just kind of weird. Really, it's going on to year 6 is really what it's going on to, unless you want to count when it was unveiled, then it would make 7. But either way, the Switch is going on to year 6. It's been 6 years since the Nintendo Switch, or at least in March of next year, it'll be 6 years exactly. And it's in an interesting spot, to be honest, because a lot has changed, whether for good or for bad, with the Switch in the span of these 6 years, if we're being honest. A lot of great games, but also it revealed a lot of stuff that we already knew from the get-go. It just became more exacerbated as time has gone on, and that's really what we're talking about here, because it creates this interesting conversation. Because yes, we can obviously talk about the performance issues of the Switch. Clearly we understand that. But I think if we wanted to focus on a different perspective of how we talk about the Nintendo Switch and the state of it. Because yes, let's be honest, in its current state, yes, it is currently selling, but it is obviously not selling as well as it used to. That's just the objective facts here. We can try arguing the facts all we want, but the reality is, it's kind of plateaued a little bit in terms of who's actually buying the system. And there's obviously going to be games that will increase sales. Clearly, for example, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The game sold 10 million copies in the first 3 days, and it also increased the sales of the console by a couple 100,000 units. So it's it makes sense that certain games will obviously generate sales. That's just the reality of it. It's a console. So of course, why do you buy a console? To play games. So of course, certain games are going to increase sales. But we've also noticed that as time has gone on, the limitations of the Switch have become more apparent, and if anything, they become more egregious, if we're just being transparent here. Whether it be games obviously not running at the desired performance that they should be. Prime example, Pokemon coming out in the state that it did, the unstable frame rate, the graphics, there are many things that are concerning. Same thing with limitations with games like Bayonetta 3 and the fact that, yes, it also has frame issues. And at the same time, it felt that Platinum could have done so much more if the hardware wasn't as limiting. And, some people can say, yes, that's not an excuse because games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 exist. And, I'm also saying this now, but please forgive my dog. I know he's just playing with a little chew toy in the background. Obviously the little rascal. But we have games like Bayonetta 3. We have games like Breath of the Wild that came out. We have games like Mario Odyssey. We have games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We have games like, the list can go on and on of certain games that make no logical sense of why they run great, they look great, but obviously there's other games that, they obviously could have done better with better hardware. And I think we're in an interesting predicament because we look at situations like, say, with the Nintendo 3DS. Because I was like, let's be honest, I got to see it firsthand. I had the original Nintendo 3DS, probably a year or two after it came out. And then when the new Nintendo 3DS XL came out, I bought that. I had sold my original DS and bought that with my own money because at that time I was working at McDonald's in high school. I think I was a junior in high school, somewhere like that. And it came out around the same time frame because if you do the math, it took about 5 years for Nintendo to make one. So we're in this interesting predicament of, should Nintendo make a refresh? Objectively, I'd say yes. I think anybody with common sense, it's probably the most talked about thing on the internet. The rumors are going crazy. Yes, we should expect a new Switch to be announced, whether it be next year or even 2024, because let's be real here, it obviously sells well. And that's something we should also be mindful of, is the fact that this idea of a hybrid console or this type of device, the Switch obviously made this much more popular, profitable. It obviously created this, desire in consumers that they want to have these console level experiences, but on the go. And to be honest, it worked. It's a formula that clearly worked because these suckers were able to sell over 100 million units pretty easily. I think we're pushing 112 million, somewhere around that range. And it's one of those things where it's just fascinating if you think about it. To be honest with you, it really is. But where are we at now? Yes, tons of games. Obviously a lot of heartache. And probably neck deep in accessories that, let's be honest here, I know I have a lot of Switch accessories. I'm being honest, I just bought a new grip for my Switch. But I think for me, taking a look, because I had the base model Switch when it came out in 2017. Actually, I bought it, when it came out in 2017, I bought it as a graduation present. And then now I have the OLED. And to be honest, if I look at my experience using the Switch, it has been a very fun experience. I've enjoyed a lot of the games that have come out. I've enjoyed playing a lot of these games with my friends, whether it be Mario Kart, whether it be Mario Party, whether it be obviously games like Legends Arceus that I talked about, or even currently Scarlet that I'm playing through, or even just other games like Monster Hunter Rise, another favorable experience of mine, or even, let's look through the catalog in my mind, because I'm obviously Mario Tennis Aces, or I'm trying to see. Oh yeah, Lego Star Wars. That's another big game for me too. And obviously a lot of my other back catalog of games. To me, the Switch is in a very interesting spot, if we're just being honest here. Because yes, it's still selling. Yes, it is still a very popular system. It's a formula that clearly works for Nintendo. But we also acknowledge that there are limitations. Because we even knew this when the Switch came out, it was already outdated. It was nowhere near as powerful as even the base Xbox One or even the base PS4. And a lot of people, that's what they really want. If they had that level of performance just in a handheld form factor, they'd be very happy, to be honest. Because, it would actually run games probably a lot smoother if we're being transparent here. And I think going forward with the Switch, this is going to be the problem that Nintendo's going to run into, because they're do we continue and just create a revision like how we did in the past with, say, like prime example, like let's talk about the revisions that have gone throughout the ages, like the Game Boy to like the Game Boy Color to the Game Boy Advance to say like the Nintendo 3DS to the new 3DS, or even say like the DSi, or let's say the Nintendo DS, the DS Lite, all the way to the DSi. Like we've seen this pattern of Nintendo creating revisions with their handheld system. So I'm surprised that we haven't gotten there yet, but it makes sense they've been, waiting it out, because let's be real, the sucker's still selling. I personally do believe that if Nintendo were to make a more powerful Switch, whether it be like continue down the formula, like using the OLED screen, obviously more performance, like whether it be in handheld, docked, or both, maybe even adding a processor inside the dock so that, you can get more performance, so like you can just create a new chip inside of the Switch itself and then put a chip in the dock and, copy what Microsoft did with, say, like the Surface Books, where there was a processor in the display and then there was a processor in the keyboard, so you can put them together, it creates more power. If they go down a rabbit hole like that, I think that would be a very smart and intuitive way, because let's be real, Nintendo is always trying to find creative ways to solve problems. Let's be real here. This is just how this company works. But I also do acknowledge that in the current state of the Switch, yes, the Switch is in a healthy spot, but it's also stagnated. However, we should also acknowledge that I'm worried that the current success of the Switch is going to make Nintendo go down this rabbit hole of being maybe a little bit overconfident, because they're like, well, we made all this money, these suckers are still buying everything we make. And it's one of those things where I'm worried that Nintendo could pull a Sony and go down that rabbit hole. Now, we just have to wait and see, because again, this is all speculation, we don't know. But I think the current state of the Switch, it's in a healthy spot, but we also have to acknowledge the reality is that yes, it is stagnating. And this has been said multiple times, like we're not necessarily breaking new ground here, but we should acknowledge it, especially now that we've seen things like Pokemon, we've seen things like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Bayonetta 3. We've seen like these new games that have come out this year, and how obviously, yes, Pokemon is the juggernaut, and that's obviously gonna, increase sales and things like that. But I do think, especially with the release of Pokemon, with the release of Bayonetta 3, we're starting to see more and more of this idea that yes, I do firmly believe that a revision is going to be needed going forward. I don't even think that's even questionable at this point. We desperately need a more powerful Switch, because let's just be real here. If you obviously want more third-party games and some of these bigger AAA games from third parties, yeah, you're gonna need more powerful hardware. And at the same time, if first-party developers had more powerful hardware and they optimized for it, then yeah, a lot of these experiences could become a lot more enjoyable. Because think about it, next year we have Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom coming out. One of arguably the biggest games of the year coming out. And I think it would be fair, and I don't think it'd be unrealistic to say, I think this experience could be better if it had more powerful hardware. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. How long have you had your Nintendo Switch for, if you even own one to begin with? And if you're considering buying one, why are you considering buying one? Like, why now all of a sudden? Like, are you just happy with the games catalog that you've seen so far and how it's developed over the span of these 5 years now, going on to 6 years? Are you excited for games that are coming out next year, or games that are currently in the pipeline, they're just still waiting on, things like that? But let me know. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel about the Nintendo Switch? And let's just have a conversation about it. Because like I said, the state, whenever we do episodes like this where we talk about the state of something, it's an ongoing conversation, because it doesn't just end. Like the state of the Nintendo Switch in this case, it's not over, because let's be real, the Switch is still gonna have a long lifespan. Like it's probably gonna maybe push 10 years, and then I'd say probably like 2025, 2026, that's when Nintendo's finally gonna move on to the next system. Either that, or they just continue the Switch branding, because the Switch brand is just so powerful now. Because let's be real, it sells. When you think of the Nintendo Switch, well, or when I put it like this, whenever you think of a handheld that looks like the Switch, people just say, oh, that's a Nintendo Switch. You get what I'm saying? Like, the Switch branding is very powerful, and it's very marketable and profitable. So I want us to keep that in mind when we think about stuff like these episodes, because like I said, they're ongoing conversations. And as time goes on, we begin to see how things change over time, how things mature, when the decline happens and things like that. And who knows, maybe when we do this episode in the next 3 years or something like that, we get to see where Nintendo's at. And, if the Nintendo Switch really was the best selling system or even the best system Nintendo's ever made in their history. But I thank you guys so much for being patient with me, because let's be real, this episode is coming out on a Friday, and this week has just been, just a little, it's been busy. We're getting ready for finals and things like that, and just finishing up the semester strong. But I hope you guys, first off, I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving and time with your family. I really do. I hope it's great if you celebrated Thanksgiving. I hope that everyone is just having a great day so far. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful week and weekend. And guys, be safe. Don't do anything dumb. The world is still a weird place, so let's just try to be kind and respectful to those around us. But be safe, everyone. And I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful week and weekend. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.